screen starts recording also. Oops, there we go. All right. We are recording, we are streaming. Video live now, there we go. And I need to mute it so that I don't echo myself. Okay, cool. So it's kind of funny where the camera is that's great, Karen. You're actually like kind of half standing there looking for a handshake.
Still?
Yeah, if you don't move, it'll just hold it forever. Yeah. So I can walk up to you now and I can just go like this and go F3 and then we'll shake hands. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Oops.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi. Hi, Matt. How you doing?
Good.
Is you right next to me?
No, that's camera Matt. He's gonna sit in the chair up there at some point.
Hi, camera Matt.
How's it going?
Oh, there you are. Okay. Now I'm kind of getting my way.
I'm here. So camera Matt's actually, the funny thing is camera Matt's actually like up about 10 feet in the air and a little bit stage left of center. But you know, that's how we make it work. And let's see. Oh, we got some people watching on Facebook already.
Okay.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah, that's great. Hello, Facebook people.
Hi, Bree. How are you?
Hi, good. Working out all the pieces of this.
Yeah, it took me a while. My new trick is I'm learning how to walk while moving my head at the same time. It's a lot of coordination for that one there. But I had to run over and introduce myself. My name is Lauren Lemieux, and I'm the head of marketing at Bundler. And I think, did I see on your profile that you work with Dr. Booth, Professor Booth?
Yes, I do.
He was one of my professors way back in the day.
Of course, everyone loves Paul. So that's what I was like.
I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh. Well, I guess not that small of a world because we all,
Yeah, well, that's part of my story too, is that Paul asked last year, sometime probably around this time last year, did we want to put together a grant for these internal innovation grants to do a VRAR lab? Because I was doing the AR class. I wasn't doing hardly anything with VR. And I was like, sure, well, let's do this. I'll be on it. And then we got the grant. And then I've sort of taken over the VR component. And he's just like, okay, these are the things that we're doing.
Funny. How much fun though? It sounds like a good time. And he was a fun professor. I didn't mind going to his classes. So,
Yes.
So it was always a good one. Yeah, him and Sean Horan. Horan. I'm not sure if he's still there, but
Sean's not there anymore. Actually, do I have Sean's line?
Yeah, I was there a long time ago. I'm dating myself here.
Yeah, Sean went to Texas State for a bit, and then now he is where is he? He's a department chair at Fairfield University.
Okay, cool. Very, very good for him. I know a lot of the professors that I had good relationships with. A lot of them have ended up all over the country, because we stay connected on LinkedIn and things like that. So it's good to know that Paul is still there.
Yes.
Sorry,
he actually lives very close to me too.
Oh, does he really? That's great. I know I'm up in Milwaukee now, but I really miss living in Chicago, especially come, around the holidays. It's always so much fun. Not this year so much, but
probably not this year.
On a normal year. Yeah.
Hello, Francis on Facebook. Good to see you. Sorry.
Yeah.
When somebody comments on Facebook, I try to, at least let them know to thank them and
bones. Yeah, are you going to put the tables out again? I really liked those little talking bubbles at the
we
end.
We are going to do so. What we're doing open, no seating prior to the event, and then we're going to do the tables during the event, or the little desks kind of during the event, and then after the event we're going to put those circle tables with the private spaces.
Very cool. So then standing room only. I like it.
Yeah, well, we noticed, the one thing we noticed last time is when people came in, they all just came in and sat down and nobody talked. And we're like, okay, this is weird. It's like everyone's coming to class and no one's saying anything. So we decided this time we're not even going to put the desks in place until we're about to start the event.
Forced bonding. I like it.
I love a little social engineering.
Exactly.
Hello, Michael. Michael Nelson. Have you been to previous events, Mike? Michael's watching us on Facebook, but I don't think I've seen him at prior events, so he might be a new person. And Billy McFarland from Bright College. Awesome. So these are people on Facebook, just by the way. Anyone in the room, you guys have actual microphone control, so you can say hello to people who are there. I'm saying hi to the people on Facebook who are entering their comments, because we love having the Facebook people actually enter comments. It's great. That's the other thing too, is we always, it seems weird, it seemed weird for a while for people to realize that it's like, oh, you can actually put comments in the Facebook and we'll read them in the room and actually interact with you and talk to you. So it works pretty well. We'll see. Well, where are we? We're at 6:08, so we still got some time. We did have the one thing I'll say about this event, we had a lot of people responding on the RSVP on this event. I was going to say Myanmar, that's a new one. I saw Auckland, somebody from Auckland RSVP'd, University of Auckland in New Zealand. So I was like, that might have taken the record from the farthest person. Although we actually had a presenter from New Zealand about 1.5 years ago. So. All right, who do we have in the room? We have Cindy. I just saw your RSVP come through. You're one of the later people to RSVP, but thank you for coming in.
Be here for Karen. She's supported me and I need to support her.
Sounds great. And hello, Daniel.
Oh, hi, Cindy.
Hi, Karen.
And Pinkney.
I didn't realize
So
you
glad
were
it's working out that Cassie's going to get to present. in
Howdy.
December.
I am hoping I am audible.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you.
when is that?
Okay, great. It's a little
December
hard.
15th.
I
I'll
don't
be
see
announcing
many
it. Make
instructions
sure
for
you get it
VR, so I was
during our
kinda
regular meeting, but
experimenting.
forward to it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually really hard. I've
too.
been in this environment in the VR headset. It's a little bit hard.
I'll
Great.
send you a message
I
about
mean,
it, okay?
it's cool.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Good luck with your presentation.
I just didn't.
Thanks so much.
I didn't feel like folks could hear me, so I'm glad to hear that's true. That you can.
Yep.
Definitely hear you.
Am I too loud?
Oh,
No,
no.
not at
I
all.
was just confirming. No.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. I can pull it down if I need to.
No, not at all.
Welcome back, Margot.
Hi, everyone.
Nice. Having done this for 3 years now, it's great to actually see a lot of the names and recognize them. To get to see people over and over again.
Hi, Margot.
Hi, how are you?
All right, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'll do the F3.
Sorry, I'm not used to use that yet too much.
Okay.
So, how are you doing?
Good. Looking forward to having this conversation with the other presenters and with everyone who's attending.
Are you one of the presenter too, right?
I am, yes.
Matthew, is my audio coming through?
It is.
Ah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll turn the tables on in just a minute so people can start to sit down. But we do have people filtering in at this point. I'm not sure how many people, I don't know how many of you guys got caught up by the updates. I know, particularly with me, yesterday or 2 days ago, I went to load the app and it took a long time to download. All right.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to find out if they publish a log of the changes.
So Francis is asking us from Facebook if we could have virtual food and virtual drinks on a table in the conference room. That'd be great. I don't know how useful it would be. I've got a real I've got an actual physical drink in front of me, and I got some candy over here to my left because it's just the way it has to be sometimes. But we're gonna get started in about 13 minutes.
No. I did not mean to do that. I apologize.
What'd you do?
Well, have a look.
Which button?
Are you
did you
dancing?
hit?
Dance, yeah.
I was, yes.
Who got Riverdance? I want to know what the code is for the Thriller dance. I saw them doing that. All right. Hey, Lalo.
Hey,
Does
your
the
Quinn is
watch
here.
have, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if the watch has functionality in VR. I'm thinking there must be a menu I'm just not able to access somehow.
Like I said, I've been in this environment in an actual VR headset twice, just very, very briefly. So I can't speak too much to how you actually do things. It's pretty cool, but at the same time, I've also found that, particularly when I'm running this event like I am, and I've got to have, 2 computers and open broadcast software and Facebook comments, it's really hard to do it from VR. So I just do it from a flat desktop.
Yeah, I keep tapping the watch. I guess that's wired in if you do enough VR, but now I'm going to stop.
That's all good.
Yeah, it looks like it just tells the time. That's it. None of the buttons work.
Well, it's cool to know the time. VR is usually like a casino where they try not to let you know the time.
There's a VR, the new game, Population 1, where I've seen a lot of the people who are doing like the Facebook videos of it playing, and they have Discord somehow open while they're in the game too. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. You just get there are various overlays that you can get. I use it's called OVR, I think, OVR plus something like that. But it's essentially just an overlay you wear on your wrist that you can do Discord, you can do Twitch. A lot of Twitch streamers use it.
Yeah, I got to figure out how to do that with the Quest then, because I just got the Quest 2 and I've not spent much time in it.
Oh, the Quest 2 is sweet.
But we are about a minute out, so I'm going to set up some tables here that people can go sit in, and I'm actually going to get my avatar to go sit in one of them really quick. So, whoop. This is going to be confusing everybody because now the camera's moving around.
There we go. Come on. Oh, there's Kaylee. Kaylee Sharp.
Hey, Christian, can you hear me?
Hello, Daniel.
Kaylee. Hi.
Christian, can you hear?
Kaylee, are you okay?
Probably away from our computer.
Thank you so much. All right, I've arrived.
Kaylee.
Hello.
Oh, Matt, you just stole my seat.
Hello.
All right.
I see Fallon Flowers standing next to me. I'm
Yes.
April.
I just saw
April, how are you?
an emoji above your head, Kaylee.
VR
Can you hear
days
me?
going on
Nice to
too.
meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Wow. This is
My
my
first
first
time here.
time. Yeah. So I don't know what
But
I'm
actually, your
doing.
avatar actually looks like you.
I know.
All right, folks, we're going to get started in just a second.
Oh goodness, this is like baby steps, huh?
Right.
I did a lot
I'm
better
gonna go
with
sit over
Nintendo when
there.
I was growing up.
I don't know if you can hear me or not. You see me.
We can hear you, and I'm actually going to mute the room in just a second. So if everyone's grabbing seats, great. So it's about the point where I'm going to mute the audience.
Oh, okay.
So,
Do that.
I used the up arrow key because my mouse wasn't working to move me around in here.
Yeah,
So
thank you. My mouse wasn't working either.
no problem. Yeah, I was walking around outside.
I'm like, why can't I walk now?
all right, folks, here we go. We are going to mute the audience and get started. So, Kayla, if you don't mind trying to take a seat when you get a chance, that'd be great. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Seeing some more people trickle in. Hello to everybody on Facebook. David from Roscoe, Illinois, Francis, Billy McFarland, Michael Nelson, and everyone who made it in the room, and for the people who I'm sure are going to trickle in once they get past the giant Rubella update that surprised us all when we tried to log in today. Real quick, we're gonna, let's test the interface if you're in the room a little bit, and we'll do a quick show of hands for how many of you have been to one of these events before. If you have, please press the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen in Virbella. Okay, we got a decent number of first timers here, which is great. So for those of you who haven't been here, this is VRAR Chicago. Really quickly about the event. This event's been going on for a little over 3.5 years at this point. I started it pretty much shortly after I got into full-time professional VRAR development work, primarily because I was looking for an event series in the Chicago area that was going to help people effectively figure out what to do, like figure out how to utilize VR, how to actually, if you're in the industry and you're trying to find somebody who's, works in the tech and can answer your questions or get a demonstration, or if you're a developer who works in VR and AR and you're just trying to meet people in the industry, I didn't see an event series that really helped people connect with the community the right way. So I started one, and it's been going really well. We held this event. This is, traditionally a physical event that's been held at 1871 in Chicago. Unfortunately, obviously, physical events right now are not a thing that we can do. So we're going to try something new this time, and I'm controlling multiple computers at the same time here, which makes it fun. But I'm putting the slide deck up so that people can actually see what's on the slide presentations. But that said, this is traditionally an event that takes place in Chicago. We used to pull about 75 to 150 people a month. Every month we focus on a new industry if you haven't been here before. And again, the point of this event is for you, for the audience, both those of you who are watching on Facebook and those of you who are in the virtual event now. And if we ever get back to physical events, the people who make it to physical events. We're hoping that whatever your question is, whatever you're trying to learn or whatever you're trying to do, that'll help you take a step forward in using immersive technology, we can help you achieve that today. Even if it's just, meeting somebody who's on the panel or in the audience, or setting yourself to, have access to equipment so you can try a demonstration, or, meet somebody in the industry if you're a developer and you're trying to figure out how you can create solutions for this industry. That said, we would not be able to do this without the help of our sponsors who have been supporting us all the way through. One of those sponsors who is actually here to do a presentation tonight is Bundle AR. So Lauren, if you don't mind joining me. And I will get out of the way and let you speak. And are we showing the video today, Lauren?
Yeah, if you could show briefly, that would be awesome.
All right, just tell me when. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. As Matt said, my name is Lauren Lemieux, and I'm the head of marketing at Bundler. Super brief background on our company. We are a startup, and when we're not at home, you'll find us at 1871 in Chicago, as Matt mentioned. And over the past 2 years, we've been creating an augmented reality platform that enables users to design, publish, and access augmented reality experiences without having to write a single line of code. And as many of you know, by design, in and of itself, augmented reality is experiential, it's immersive, it's engaging, and when it comes to education, that type of communication of material is invaluable. It makes this information very accessible when students and users may need it most, whether it's something as simple as bringing a history text video, or one of my favorite applications is, if an education program can't afford science materials, they, instead of having to bring frogs in, they can have a digital model, and students could still learn about the anatomy and the process of dissecting with an interactive 3D model, but without having to deal with the smell. So that's a little bit of a win there. And then there's also the fun factor of AR. As many of you know, even here in this platform, everybody's having a lot of fun. So this digital content and these virtual environments are just so fun and engaging. And there's that easy to bring that gamification into the curriculum. Matt, if you want to hit play on the video, we have a really brief video. Sometimes the sound in Virbella is a bit loud and we can't control that. So you might want to turn it down a bit, right, Matt? I think that's your disclaimer. And it's just kind of a brief preview of how you can build your own AR experience on our.
Sounds good. Here we go.
Until now, creating augmented reality was hard. IT departments simply do not have the expertise, so they rely on expensive developers and one-off solutions. Introducing Bundle AR's augmented reality platform. Bundle AR's revolutionary, self-serve augmented reality content management system allows anyone, anywhere, to easily create, edit, and deploy augmented reality to Apple and Google devices instantly and on a global scale. Now is the time to add on-demand, accurate, and trusted digital information to your communications through a tool nearly everybody already has, their smartphone. Perfect for just-in-time immersive training, learning, and development programs. Easily place multimedia content like videos or interactive 3D models on real-world items like signage, brochures, or packaging to enhance your audience's understanding of your product, procedures, or story. No special equipment or coding skills necessary. It's augmented reality made easy. Visit bundlear.com now to get started.
Matt. So, as you can see, this technology can really go as far as your imagination. Hit a lot of exciting milestones this year and recently started rolling out free trials. So if you'd like to test it out or try it out yourself or learn more about augmented reality solutions, I'll post my email in the public chat box, and I'd absolutely love to connect. And finally, thank you, VRAR Chicago, for putting this event together. We're always excited and look forward to it every month. And I think, we can't wait to learn about the virtual and augmented reality applications and performance when it comes to education. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lauren. So that was Bundle AR, and up next, the one group who we like to thank, even though right now it's very difficult to work with them directly, is 1871, which is Chicago's technology incubator. How many of you, just show of hands really quickly, who's familiar with 1871 in Chicago? Okay, a lot of you. Excellent. So 1871 in Chicago is, for those of you who aren't, it was about half the room that raised their hands, by the way. 1871 is a partnership with the Chicago Entrepreneurial Center. And there's approximately, prior to the pandemic, at least, there was approximately 400 to 450 companies that were actually based out of 1871, mostly technology, a lot of them startups in various stages, some of them, single person just getting started in a founder, some of them were a lot larger and actually had private spaces. And what 1871 does now is they actually have a bunch of programs that are helping companies more directly get started. So, if you're in the phase where you're really just sort of exploring and trying to figure out how to get started versus if you're in the phase where you're you have a solid idea and you're trying to test it out and get market, determine your market viability with the product that you're coming up with. And then, for those that have actually proven that they have a product, proven that they've got a market, and now they're just trying to scale. There's a couple of different programs that they have available that they're hosting 100% virtual at this point. So if you, for those of you who are watching, who are entrepreneurs, who are thinking about getting started or looking for access to a lot of tools for anyone that's trying to get started, 1871 is a solid resource. And when we do get back to being able to actually physically go into a co-working space, it's a great membership. It's a very great, it's an awesome community. It used to be great just kind of walking into that space because you could not walk into their shared space and not feel energized. Just with the buzz that was kind of happening around you. It's really interesting now. I actually went down last week for the first time since the pandemic started, and I was one of the only people who was in the space. I guess there were a total of 12 people in the space that day versus hundreds that it used to be. It was very surreal being in there and just not seeing as many people as I used to, but their programming is still going strong. The other sponsor we have is the space that we're all sitting in, which is Virbela. With the pandemic, we had to transition very quickly into virtual space. And when we did it initially, we actually moved into Allspace, but we ran into some problems with Allspace, namely a large portion of our audience is on Macs, and Allspace did not have a Mac client. So we were looking for alternatives and adjustments that we could make. And Virbela actually reached out to us and said, you guys should try us out. And we did. And we've been here ever since. And, the first time we came in here in July, they thought it was so great that they decided to sign on and sponsor us and give us access to a dedicated space every month. VRAR Chicago actually now has a team suite as well in Virbela. And we're, consulting with organizations about how to throw events. And one of the venues that we consider quite often is, in fact, Virbela. So Virbela is another sponsor. For those of you, if you want to learn more about what it's like to actually have a virtual office in this campus or in this space, feel free to reach out to myself or Tom Packard because we do, Bundle AR has an office in the VR, but Bundle AR has a little room in the VRAR Chicago office. VRAR Chicago does have a team suite here in Virbella. It's a great experience. But with that, enough of our sponsors. Let's get to why you're here. So the agenda and kind of the format for tonight, so you guys are, understanding how this works. We have a bunch of presenters. These panelists are here, and what they're going to do is they're going to do a very quick presentation, very brief presentation about their experience, what they do, where they work. And this is primarily to give you guys just a better feel for when you have your questions, who you want to ask, if you want to ask somebody specific. And so, the main thing here being that, again, this event is about you guys, the audience. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook, feel free to type comments or type questions in the comments. And when we get to the Q&A portion, we will bring them into the room so that the people on the panel can ask. And those of you who are in the room, when we get to the Q&A, we'll use the raise hand function. But for the next section here, we're going to have each of the presenters come up one by one and introduce themselves and what they do, starting with Karen Alexander. So Karen, if you wouldn't mind joining me here. And I will get out of the way. Thank you much.
Great, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I am Karen Alexander, and my company is called XRCONNECTED. And through XRCONNECTED, I provide consulting services in healthcare, manufacturing, and education. I also produce 360-degree videos. And I've been involved with education in XR for a number of years, but not in any very traditional ways. Next slide, please. I started out with a background in higher education. I was the Dean of Junior and Senior Year Programs at the Women's College at Rutgers University, which was a very wide-ranging job. And my duties included things like accompanying students on international service learning trips and being the liaison for a construction project. Next slide. And I had developed an interest in XR by late 2015 and started reading everything I could get my hands on about it. Chris Milk's quote about VR being the ultimate empathy machine was kind of really what got its hooks into me. And I made a complete life change in 2016. And I went on a trip, part of which included Denver, Colorado, where I attended my first XR conference, which was an immersive education conference, part of which was held at the Denver Museum of Science and Natural History. Hope I got that right. And at this conference, I got my chance to try my first fixed-off headset. I had my own Samsung Gear VR, the phone-based headset, but there I tried David Romero's HTC Vive, and David now works for Vive. And I also made a good friend there. Next slide, please. And Simone Keller-Fuster, who's a professor in Brazil who's working with augmented reality. And so by the following year, I had bought my own 360-degree camera and started making films, including one called Cities in Protest, which you can view on the XRCONNECTED YouTube channel. And I presented about that particular video and the possibilities for education with 360-degree video at the Immersive Education Conference in Lucca, Italy, which I traveled to with Simone. And by that time, I had my own fixed-off headset. Next slide, please. So I settled in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 2017. And there I started to put into practice some of my ideals with regard to technology. Next slide. So I believe that technology should improve people's lives. If it doesn't do that, then it's not good for much else. And also that everyone should have access to creation tools so that they can take part in the next computing platform and can really help to shape the XR industry by being producers and not just consumers of content. So I decided to try to put that to work in a small way. Next slide. I formed an organization called Pittsburgh in 360 Youth Perspectives. And I partnered with a number of different community groups to teach young people how to create 360-degree videos that expressed their views on issues or let someone see what they thought of where they lived in the city, their neighborhood, or the city itself. Next slide. And then I started working with another community organization that ran an after-school arts program with very young children. And coming from a higher education background, I mean, working with high schoolers wasn't so much different, but with little kids, it was quite a change. And I was a bit terrified at first, but it turned out to be a real joy. And I tried to make it a joy for the children, tried to make it something that they would really have fun with, and not have it be like a school experience. So we used co-spaces, and I had them create 3D worlds and stories, and we also used the Merge Cube. But it was a learning experience. Next slide. And you may not be able to read this very easily, but these were some of the skills that children practiced or things that they learned while they were creating their own 3D worlds and stories in co-spaces that they could then view in VR or AR. Next slide. I worked with a local makerspace with teens to have them create digital products. So when you think of a makerspace, you think of physical objects, but in this case, they were creating digital items. And I used the Sustainable Development Goals in this 8-week program to sort of guide them through this process. And again, we use co-spaces for some of the projects, Tilt Brush, Unity, and also 360 video. So a variety of things going on in that context. Next slide. I had done some consulting at Rutgers after I left there. And one of the things I did with them last year was to help organize and run a program to encourage middle and high school girls to pursue their interest in STEM careers, some of which involved using XR technologies. And in fact, it's quite interesting that the building in the picture there is the same one that you saw under construction in my first slide. Next slide, please. I worked with our local community television station, Pittsburgh Community Television, to create an event called Community XR. And this was inspired by the work of Kathy Bisbee in the Boston area, who has done some pretty amazing things with Community XR. And our program rotated from place to place around the city every month. And it was an opportunity for people to come in and try XR for the first time, sort of a digital literacy project. And we also provided information about where they could learn to do more and get started with creating. Next slide. But guess what happened next? We had an event scheduled for March 14th. March 13th, I became ill with COVID myself. So clearly that had to stop, and everything changed. The work I was doing with children and youth at the time stopped. Next slide. But I still was involved in education and training using XR. I had started in January a project called Augmenting Healthcare, in which we were using a simple AR headset to support frontline healthcare workers like nurses in nursing homes, firefighters, paramedics, and allow them to connect with doctors when they encountered a problem that they had not been trained in solving, or that they didn't feel like they had the skills to deal with. That project ran into a lot of problems, and COVID affected it quite a lot too. There were other problems as well, which I could get into, and it's still going and has morphed a bit. And now we're working with nursing faculty and paramedicine faculty at a local community college. This is taking place in Southwest Oregon, to do some training between the nurses and the paramedics there. Next slide. And one of the things I did this summer was to work with several researchers whose work I became fascinated with. And this was Mina Johnson-Glenberg, Cassandra Eng, and Corinne Brenner, who are all in some way or another working on the ways that active learning in VR can really be effective and can even help to promote executive function in children's brains. So this was in the Continuing Professional Development in VR program run by Steve Bambury out of Dubai. have participated in that since 2017. It's in the Engage platform, and I encourage you to check it out. Next slide. I also worked with my friend Simone, who you saw early in this presentation, and she's based in Brazil. A colleague of hers there and a NASA scientist, they had developed a prototype for training pilots using 360 video and interactive 3D objects, and we wrote a conference paper together on that. So again, this is in the training realm. So I'm sort of have a broad approach to what you might call education in XR. Next slide. And that is pretty much it for me now. There's more I could say. I'd love to tell you about some other initiatives that I'm involved in, and I would love to take your questions later. And thank you very much, Matt and Tom, for inviting me.
And thank you, Karen. All right. So up next, and again, you guys will have the chance to ask questions of pretty much everybody who's going to be here, which is the great part of this. So up next, we have Dekker Dreyer. Dreyer, sorry. I'm obviously mispronouncing as I'm trying to read and control slides and do stuff at the same time. So Dekker, if you want to join me here. Excellent. I'll get out of the way and let you take over.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing today? This is going to be an odd kind of talk because obviously we're not going to be able to give the same kind of feedback and everything between like an audience and a speaker. So that's one of the unusual drawbacks of VR right now for a creative campus or an educational space. But we're going to get into that in my slide presentation in a second. As of right now, I am a subject matter expert over at University of Maryland, working on their XR programs, and I was with Columbia College Chicago for many years, doing their immersive producing program, both from creating class content to being an instructor. And what I'm going to kind of tell you guys about today is a little bit unusual because I work in academia, but my primary thing is that I'm an artist and I'm a storyteller. So I have to disclose that a lot of this is speculation. A lot of this is not peer-reviewed social science. This is just anecdotes from my personal experience, primarily teaching XR in a telepresence environment. So I've been using Zoom for my classes long before the pandemic. And, we were reaching students all the way from, South America, Europe, just each session, it was an entire sort of global scale of people, and we were coordinating Zoom classes and having these long sessions and things. So I'm very familiar with the kinds of positives and negatives for what's happening right now with a lot of students around the United States and the world. So let's move forward to the next slide. This is a very brief presentation that I call Students XR. Next slide. And the apocalypse, because now everybody out there is trying to grapple with some of the issues that I was trying to grapple with using Zoom and telepresence for my classes. Especially teaching something like XR, a subject that's very, very technical, philosophical. It touches on so many different, kinds of points. Zoom really kind of revealed itself as being excellent for sort of emotional engagement, but at the collegiate level. But when you start getting a little bit younger, I saw some cracks appearing. So what I did was, at least when I kind of thought about that as an experiment, and I tested my hypotheses in a very unscientific way by going to a whole bunch of friends of mine who teach K through 12 and asking them what their current experience is like with Zoom and how VR could perhaps improve on some of that. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to first look at what the downsides are here for Zoom in a high school environment. And the number one thing that my sort of panel of experts had told me was that there's a lot of socioeconomic pressure that students have, an anxiety that's built up around presenting themselves on camera. And if you guys remember, this person up in the corner was a foreign policy expert. I think it was on BBC, and he was giving this talking head speech, and the toddler in the little stroller thing came in the background. It was a big meme for a while, and it really kind of presents the problem that everybody is facing now, where they're doing these Zoom classes. And in high school, let's kind of be honest, a classroom environment is a great equalizer. A campus is a great equalizer. People come into a shared learning space, and what they leave behind is perhaps some chaos that's at home. You don't know how many brothers and sisters they might have. You don't know what their parent dynamic is like. You don't know what kinds of dressings in their bedrooms and things that they can afford. And now we're kind of exposing that level of privacy to people who are very, very, very vulnerable. These young people in high school age, grades 9 through 12, where you're kind of figuring out your place in the world, and you're figuring out how to present yourself. And there's a lot of privacy that needs protection. A lot of that safety of the home environment and what you choose to expose to your fellow students is now exposed through the Zoom environment. And that can be both through what you might be eating during lunch period. People will see you kind of having your snacks and things like that. A lot of times you're going to see a virtual backdrop available in Zoom, but that's not something that's encouraged in a K through 12 learning environment, because it's considered distracting to see some of the students in front of a bunch of palm trees when everybody else is trying to learn. So the teacher will discourage the use of these virtual backgrounds. So now you start seeing, posters on the wall. You might see if, somebody who's in the 11th grade sleeps with a teddy bear because their thing is pointed at. You have no idea what kinds of anxieties this is going to create in a world where we're already worried about bullying and online bullying and what we expose to the larger population. So how do we mitigate this? We can create an environment like we're in right now in Virbela, where we have a true virtual campus, where that personal privacy is retained and the learning space, the integrity of it is maintained. So let's go to the next slide. We can start now looking at the tools that are available in something like Virbela or any other virtualized campus environment. We can start looking at collaboration skills and how they can be worked with students. I'm sure right now you're at these single desks, but in other versions of this, if you've been on Virbela, you can see that there are tables that you can sit at that have multiple people, and we can sort of break people off into work groups. Why that's important is it allows for collaboration in ways that typical video conferencing doesn't allow. It allows the teacher to walk through, drop off materials, and you can talk with a small group. You're sectioned off from the large group, and you can actually do joint projects together in a formal learning environment. Zoom has these sort of breakaway sessions, and I don't mean to pick on Zoom, but it's just the most popular video conferencing solution right now. They have the ability to break off sessions, but you don't have the ability for teachers to oversee each of those sessions in the same way they could as if they were walking through a classroom or just watching the students. So let's go to the next slide. So VR is all about focus. Right now, there are a lot of scientific studies that are happening about using virtual reality to improve the ability for people with ADHD to focus on specific topics in learning environments. That's a really, really important thing, where especially if you're working with younger students, you could potentially filter and say, okay, we maybe having 5, 6, 7 avatars in a group session isn't right. Maybe having 20 avatars in a group session for an entire class isn't right for these students. We can actually turn off those distractions, and I could be giving this speech to one individual student that might need a little bit of extra time to focus. So this would be similar to in a classroom where I'm able to go and I can stand next to one person and I can sort of cordon them off, or we can talk, or we can bring them to a specialized classroom or something like that. That's not available to people in a video conferencing limited set of tools that was really built for more of a corporate meeting setting. So virtual reality in this set of circumstances is incredibly powerful for simulating that environment that you would have in a K through 12 classroom. Now, one of the downsides that's happening right here in our session while I'm doing this talk is that I don't get that sort of feedback from people. I know that everybody is kind of muted, and my gestures and things are a little bit strained. So what's going to have to improve is going to be better, maybe depth camera based motion tracking, so that my avatar can more freely mimic the the sort of gestures that I'm doing and the way that my mouth is moving and the things that I'm kind of bringing to what I would normally do in a physical world talk. But that's just a small technical hurdle that we're going to be bridging the gap on very, very quickly. These technologies already exist. It's just a matter of streamlining them and implementing them into these kinds of learning environments. So next slide. So now we get up to the college environment, the university environment, and we don't have necessarily the same kinds of socioeconomic fears and things, but we start to really harness virtual reality as a way to piggyback off of the regular classroom. And as Karen was saying in her speech, there's so many different ways to start visualizing data and collaborating in these kind of environments that virtual reality really gives us the ability to go into data and see it as a physical world. What you see on screen behind me is a graphic for what's called OnSite. This is a piece of NASA developed software that developed here in California at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And what it's used for is they've taken all of this Mars data that they have. This was released in 2018, and they've taken all of this Mars data that they've collected over the years, and they've built a sort of virtual Mars landscape that exists within the software as a collaborative tool. So scientists at universities from all over the world can go into a collaborative setting, kind of like we're in here, and they can actually explore this Mars data as a physical environment. And I see that as a real step forward for how university learning is going to start bringing people from their physical campus into data spaces so that they can not only collaborate the same way that they could over a standard, sort of telepresence setup, but really start exploring physical spaces together and adding an extra layer to the collaborative atmosphere of a university. So let's go to the next slide. So this is student 3. This is the autodidact. This is going to be a little bit more complicated because especially during this sort of chaotic election cycle that we're in right now as I'm speaking, there's so much misinformation that's online. Everybody out here has heard about the flat Earth theory, and then there's more obscure things like QAnon, which is a popular conspiracy theory. There's these other far out things saying like the birds aren't real, the birds are robots, they're surveillance cameras. Some people really believe this. Why did they believe this? Let's go to the next slide. Well, this is because we don't necessarily have ecosystems in the social media environment that are set up to mitigate misinformation. We don't know who's an expert and who's not an expert. So on the slide behind me, there's one graphic that you'll see at the header. It says Tonmo. That's the Octopus newsletter online. That's something I've been a part of. I'm interested in cephalopods, although I don't study them in an academic sense. I never went to school for marine biology, but it's something that interests me and it's an academic topic. So I've gravitated toward this online community, and it is run very, very strictly. So you have biologists from all over the world who are on here as moderators. They are stomping things out constantly about misinformation, about things like giant squid as being sea monsters and 100 feet long and all these different things. And they do not tolerate it at all. It's highly moderated. So that's an example of a good information community. Social media is kind of a negative information community because everything is being moderated by this sort of invisible hand, and the information isn't really being distributed in a way that gives weight to experts. So the written data that you see, the written communication, if I tell you that the sky is red and then the next person says the sky is blue, I, as a layman going into this, I can see that information, and I can just if I was coming in as a blank slate, by my own kind of interrogatory powers, I could say, well, why do you think that, or why do you believe this, or why do you believe that to the person, and they'll take a couple of minutes to go offline, and they will create a new argument and come back. It's asymmetrical. It's not, the information isn't traveling in real time. In a virtual environment, it's a lot harder to lie to people. It's a lot harder to have a real-time conversation and sort of BS your way through it. So I feel that in a virtual environment that's more direct communication based, where it's conversational, I think we would see a lot less disinformation being put forward. So next slide. That's essentially the summation of where I'm at, and I think that virtual reality can help all three types of students, all three different environments, and really get us to a place where if we encounter another thing like this pandemic, if we encounter here in California, we have wildfires, all kinds of different things, where people can't necessarily gather together, virtual reality can be an excellent substitute and augmentation to the learning environments that are available. So thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dekker. All right, and up next, we have Alex. Alex is going to come and join me here. Thank you much, and I will let you introduce yourself, Alex. Thank you much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex McNeilly, a 16-year-old junior at Maine South High School in Park Ridge, Illinois, which is like just outside of Chicago. And I am the founder and CEO of PUZZIL AR. And I'm also, I was also an editor and co-director of the Curiosity Project and the VRAR Association's parent and student resource. And I'm on this panel to give student perspective. So education right now has, obviously changed since the beginning of the year. I went from going to my classes and seeing my teachers and peers and friends in person to, now I have online school with awkwardly quiet Zoom calls and a bunch of emails that I have to send. And my school actually disabled virtual backgrounds on Zoom, so I can't even have fun with that either. And the current online school is very tiring and unmotivating, for students, because we have to stare at a screen all day from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and, it's fatiguing. And this new online school system has also really made students question the ways topics are being taught. A lot of my peers, a lot of my friends, myself included, we would rather watch, a YouTube video or an actual lab demonstration in person than having a lecture via Zoom call where you can't even see what the teacher's writing or presenting, because the video quality is so low. And, I believe the current system of online school isn't good because it forces the old system of education onto this new paradigm, this new digital ecosystem that we all have to live with now. And, the things that would work in an actual physical classroom no longer work in this digitized world. And I was wondering, what if there was something that could motivate students and help them engage and learn better? And I believe, a student myself included, I believe that immersive technology is really the answer to this. But a lot of students don't really know all about immersive technology and how to express themselves and develop for it. Next slide, please. So I started PUZZIL AR, and PUZZIL AR is one part AR educator and one part AR developer. And our goal is basically to democratize immersive technology education and expose students to the AR industry. And I believe AR is a little bit more accessible than VR. A lot of students can get it on their mobile phones, and I feel like it would be in a lot more places as compared to VR, even though VR still is very important for engaging and collaboration. So for the education side of PUZZIL, we have the Wonder Initiative. And with the Wonder Initiative, we aim to teach AR principles, design, development, and all the other components in AR in the form of events like workshops and hackathons and webinars. And we also plan to teach in the form of online content. And we're actually finalizing our content plan right now. And we plan to start releasing content this month in the form of the PUZZIL blog or we have an upcoming podcast that's coming up where it's an interview with someone in the AR industry. And on the developer side of Puzzle, my team and I are currently developing 2 apps, and one of them is swatches, one of them is called masks, and they're both centered around art, creativity, and expressing oneself with this technology. And I believe that if I can get my fellow young people to express themselves, my fellow students to express themselves and to come up with solutions to problems or visualizations to abstract concepts in AR and in immersive technology in general, and help them, enable them to make crazy, awesome things, it'll open their minds to immersive technology, and we can further the ecosystem as a whole and provide the whole XR, AR, VR industry with a whole new generation of developers, users, and designers. And right now AR is in its World Wide Web in 1995 phase, and it's just starting to become mainstream. And a lot of youth, my friends and I included, we use AR mainly in the form of social media face filters, like on Snapchat, but that's barely scratching the surface of what true immersive technology can be. So we want students to experience the fullest extent of this technology and help them with their education, engagement, and further learning. Next slide, please. So over the summer into September, I was the co-director of the VR/AR Association Student Committee's Curiosity Project and Student and Parent Resource. And so I worked alongside another student named Olivia Wenzel, and she's a freshman at Harvard right now. And she also founded her own VR company called Ultratech. And we also worked with Julie Smithson, the Chief Learning Officer of Metaverse, Fallon Brewington, who's the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of North Carolina, and Helen Rosenfeld, who was the president of MSEF, which is the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair. And they worked as our main mentors in this project. And I got involved around July when I was in the process of launching Puzzle. And Olivia and I, we helped build an 8-issue literary resource guide that taught how to develop and design in 3D, as well as walking students through the XR development process. So the goal of our resource was to assist parents, educators, and students in adopting immersive technology, and as well as 3D learning during the pandemic. And so as part of the student committee, we identified a gap in this new shift to everything being online, this digital transformation that students, Olivia and I included, were experiencing. And we weren't seeing any kind of education in schools on, how to use this technology and how to contribute it and how to make crazy cool stuff, And when COVID hit, everything just got like 10 times worse. It was so easy to just waste a bunch of time on your phone and not do anything meaningful, just like watch TikToks and Snapchat and scroll through Instagram all day instead of actually building something meaningful and building something to further your education and stuff. And so the student committee and we saw a bunch of untapped potential among these students that were kind of just wasting their time. And so we set out to tap into people's curiosity and re-inspire them. And from issues 4 to 8 of the resource, we walked students through the Curiosity Project. And the Curiosity Project was meant to promote divergent thinking. And we gave the students the prompt, how can you take something abstract in school and make it materialized and concrete using 3D and immersive technology? And with the Curiosity Project, we walked students through all the steps of XR development and showed them how they can incorporate this technology in answering their prompt. And also the demo that we actually made when we helped students with the Curiosity Project was in Julie Smithson's online metaverse engine. And our hope with that project was for teachers to use it as a teaching education resource, as well as for parents to not only educate themselves for their students' learning in this new technology, but to also use it as a home resource for themselves. So thank you. I'd be open to answering any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And so the background here for, I was going to say, Alex has been involved for pretty close to a year at this point. I think it was the first time we actually connected at a couple of the physical events at VRAR Chicago in 1871. And like I said, he one of the things we like is, again, the point of this event is for, the audience to take their next step forward. And Alex is one of those people who's definitely done this. He came in initially with a whole bunch of questions and wanting to get connected and wanted to figure out what he could do. So, connected him in with VRAR Association, connected him in with some other people in the community. He and I have been chatting on LinkedIn quite a bit, back and forth. And it's great to see that, this is where he is in less than a year as a high school student. He's got his own company. He's presenting to the VRAR Association, and he's helping other parents and students get involved. So it's really cool to see, just what a little bit of effort can do when you get involved in the community. And so up next, we have Bree McEwen. And Bree was great. I actually got to teach in her class in DePaul last week. But I'll let her talk about that before I say anything else. So
I wrote a picture of it. So
you got a picture, great. All right, so thank you very much, and I will lead you to it.
We're good to go. Well, I feel a little inadequate after listening to Alex talk about what he's doing as a junior. But similar to other backgrounds up here, I've been in higher ed for quite some time. I was counting it up, it's close to 20 years. And I've been teaching a smattering of online classes for about 15 years. And while I am a social scientist, generally I study interpersonal interaction and online information diffusion. So my VR interests and the things I want to talk to you about today are not actually data, but rather today I want to tell you a story about teaching, about pedagogy, about coronavirus, and teaching through augmented and virtual reality. But really this is a story about looking for opportunities. So next slide. First, that's the first slide. Can I have the next slide? Sorry. Okay, so I've been teaching a class for the past few years at DePaul called Discover Chicago, Augmented Chicago. And this class is actually one of my favorite things about DePaul because I've experienced a lot of different first year experience type classes. I wrote my dissertation on freshmen integrating socially into the university, which of course is a huge issue this year. And Discover does a really nice job of marrying the stuff first year students need to know with a topic that instructors are really interested in. And so the goal of my class is to have students experience the city, of course, but through a particular lens. And so other people teach, Chicago and theater, Chicago and cemeteries actually is one, Chicago and the waterways. And I teach augmented reality to talk about a sense of place, urban sustainability, and other goals. Next slide. So I'm not affiliated at all with the Chicago 00 project, but they and their work that they have done, including Jeffrey Allen Rhodes at the Art Institute, gave me the first steps to be able to design the AR class because about 4 years ago, I came across an article describing their project and the big piece that they had that was working, this picture is of their State Street project, but was the Eastland disaster. So if you're ever in Chicago, I know some of you are, some of you aren't, and this is a great social distanced activity you could do as well because you don't have to go inside anywhere. If you go to the Riverwalk, you can download their app and see all of the images of the Eastland disaster and how that kind of rolled out. And so it convinced me that there was some potential in exploring the city through the lens of augmented reality. And I would say 4 or 5 years ago, there was a smattering of things. And then there was some of me pulling other apps in and being like, this is kind of like AR. So we do statue stories. We used Field Trip before they yanked that one. And yeah, and really looked at the city through the lens of AR. Next slide. Okay, so here's some of the images of things that we have done. And so over time, we've blended together educational experiences with fun to get a sense of Chicago. And you can see there's a few pictures up here of students at the river experiencing the Eastland disaster. We've used art apps in various places, and I'm going to want to know, Alex, about swatches when that goes live, because I think that is one we would really enjoy trying out as well. We've used art apps, and then we've also gone to see Bundle AR's work at the Harold Washington exhibit at the DuSable Museum. I'm always keeping up with Matt of, what is the new thing that's out there that you've got? And of course, we, catch Pokemon all over town as part of it. In fact, when I was designing the class, you have to apply to teach this particular class. And I put forward my application, and what I got back was, are you just going to play Pokemon all week for immersion week? And I was like, no, only on Friday. It'll be fine. But it just gives a new lens and kind of a fun way to see the city. Next slide, please. And through these experiences, it's not just about AR, it's not just about art or Pokemon or wizards, right? It's also about the social possibilities here. So I also teach about sociality. We talk about using AR to support activism and social movements. I mean, DePaul has a very strong sense of mission, and so that's part of the class as well. We talk about a sense of place. What does it mean to be somewhere, which is actually a very big deal this year. And these ideas of contested definitions in terms of AR and XR and virtual reality helps us get into that liberal arts idea of contested knowledge. And we talk about capitalism, and we talk about digital divides and some of those things that Dekker was talking about in terms of access to technology. And so basically it becomes this window into a wide variety of topics that we want our DePaul students to become grounded in through fun smartphone-based apps. Next slide. The same time, a colleague, Dr. Paul Booth, invited me on an internal grant application. Paul's very interested in media. He runs the Doctor Who Club at DePaul. He does our pop culture fan conference every year. And so he was interested in VR in terms of media experiences through virtual reality. He knew I was teaching the augmented reality class and said, hey, what if we joined forces and started a lab and applied for an internal grant to get this lab started. And we were successful. Took us a couple tries, but we were successful in getting the internal grant to fund the lab. And there's our pictures with our headsets on. That's one of my favorite pictures of Paul ever. And so we started the lab, and we were going to do all of these student experiences and have people come in and oh, you are an advertising student, but you haven't gotten a chance to experience VR. And so let us put a headset on you and you can just see what it's like. And we were planning in last March to run a bunch of stress buster experiences at the lab and then also in our Loop campus. On March 16th, we were going to take VR headsets and put them on one person's face and take them off and put them on another person's face and just keep doing that. Except that was a terrible idea because, next slide, please. Because of this, as multiple other people have talked about as well. And so when coronavirus hit, I had 2 broken projects. I didn't know that the AR class was broken right away, but by June, it was very clear that we were not going to be coming back in the fall in the way that we normally teach the classes. We were not going to be having immersion week. I was not going to be taking 20, 18-year-olds all over the city and be really squished close to them in the CTA, et cetera. And I had this problem. People were kind of looking at me as we were making the switch to fully online Discover classes, oh, you use technology all the time. So therefore, you can help us figure out how to make our classes interactive online, which I could do in some ways. But I was really struggling to figure it out for augmented reality, because augmented reality is so place-based. You're in the same place, you're using your smartphone, and in our case for our class, to see the same thing in this blending of a physical space and the technological world. At the same time, what Paul and I were doing in terms of wanting to have a lab where people came and we put a headset on, when we would have a lot of different technology, we put a headset on your face, and I'm sure we were planning to wipe it off and disinfect them, et cetera, but not at the level that we would need to, and people just aren't going to be coming downtown to a lab. So the question really for us became, what do we do? So did this. Next slide. We took the lab money that was going to go to lots of different types of AR and VR, and we dumped it all into one headset, and not one, but 27 of the same headset, which is a little trickier purchase to make than I thought. I thought maybe if you were throwing that kind of money around that people would be a little bit more responsive to your request for a quote. But we did get it done. And so we ended up sending the headsets to our students, which I would say about 2/3 of my class is in the Chicago area. So I literally drove around Chicago and dropped off headsets at their houses. And we shipped the other ones out to them so that we could have just kind of a normal classroom experience. And that sounds really weird to like use this technology to then recreate a classroom. But in some senses, that's what I really wanted for these students who had finished high school, much as Alex was talking about, right? Who just finished high school on Zoom and now had planned to come to Chicago and experience Chicago and DePaul, and were stuck, in their bedrooms on Zoom school again. So what could we do that was exciting, that was different, that recreated that idea that we had of how do we do education, and how do we do it a little bit different than other places? I almost said the school motto, which is "Here we do," and I was really trying to avoid that. Next slide, please. So we're trying to recreate some normal classroom experiences for students while also figuring out what are the affordances of the VR experience that go beyond what we could do in a virtual classroom. And so here you can see this is kind of from the first day, us just sort of figuring out like, what is this space? You can see like in this image, my staff bro took it. I'm like facing away from them. We're still figuring out like, which way do you stand? But we've been able to have some group discussions. We've been able to get them in small groups together. We've been able to do some lectures, which I don't lecture a lot in normal class, but a little bit of lecture. Next slide. We have been able to do some video experiences with the auditorium. And then we've also, next slide. Short one. We had a guest speaker. Matt came in actually to talk to our class, and that worked pretty well. And he got to experience that sort of classroom environment and some of the things that work and the things that don't work. And I'm happy to talk about those. I've experienced, different headsets. The lab has Quests, but we're using the HTC Focus Pluses for the class, and then of course the Virabella experience. So I'm happy to talk about trying to run like a fairly normal-ish class in different spaces. And so you can go ahead and go to the next slide, unless you want to keep looking at Matt, but there we go. So far, we've had students in just about 3 classes or so in the VR classroom spaces. And, my kind of points of interest is that pedagogy still counts, right? You can't just throw in a new technology. You have to kind of figure it out and figure out what it'll do for you, what it won't. So learning outcomes are still important. Backward design is really important. The affordances of the space are still really important to think about what you can and cannot do. And then also my research brain is beginning to click into gear as well, right? This started as a teaching pedagogy experience, but at heart, I'm a researcher. I want to find things out. And obviously I have an interest in, well, I guess obvious to me, but I have an interest in affordances. One of my past projects was to create a survey instrument that measures affordances of social media. But I'm really interested as well as what VR does and does not afford. Like, one thing that works great is we're all in very different places right now, but we can kind of feel like we're in the same room. So you've got that idea of presence. But at the same time, you know, I started my career teaching public speaking, and this is sort of breaking a lot of the rules of public speaking. I can't make eye contact with you. I can't see emotion on your face to judge how I'm talking. And so those sorts of things are interesting to me. My original line of research, as I said, was freshmen and social integration and social interaction and friendship formation, and missing some of those social affordances makes it a little bit more difficult, although we can borrow from the computer mediated communication to think about how people adjust for those things with the affordances that you do have. I also have questions, you know, about the avatars, right? How do avatars begin to affect our identity? One of the fun parts of this project was getting to go and physically see the students and their parents and their houses. And so I know that their avatars don't always quite match up with their identity. And both Matt and I mentioned in the classroom space that our avatars might be a little thinner than we are in real life, and that, like, I don't need that. And so that has some aspects on how we see ourselves. And I realized too, within this presentation, you've gotten 3 different versions of me. You have my like school picture, this avatar that I'm standing in front of you, and then a picture of a different avatar. And so I'm interested in those kinds of effects. And I'm also really interested in how VR is going to allow us to commodify human behavior. So we already see this with social media, right? Social media, the way it makes money is that it's commodified social relationships. So on the educator side for VR, I have some concerns, because if your every move now becomes translated into data, well, who owns that? Who controls that? Who profits from it? And I think those are kind of interesting questions as well. But I will say, on the whole, it has been a very fun project, and it really does feel like a future is now moment. And with the rest of the panel, I'm happy to take any questions about how we might bring that education into the future.
All right, thank you very much, Bree.
I really appreciate that one clapper right there. Thank you.
As I said, that's the other thing too. It's like even when people do have full control of the virtual environment, it's like, oh, is the clapping thing? Do we do that now? Do we not do that now? Feel free, by the way. I think you can type /clap, or one of the function keys on Mac or on Windows computers makes the clapping sound. But we're going to go into the Q&A portion right now. So one of the first things I want to do, if I can remember how to do it, is I need to go to the live stream and turn the slides off. Actually, I'll turn the slides off in just a moment. But really quick, how the Q&A portion here works for everybody, because we are doing live Q&A. We are doing live Q&A here in the room. We are also going to be accepting live Q&A from the Facebook audience. So Facebook, if you have a question, please type it in the comments. And I try very hard to get questions and answers in the order that I receive them. I can see when people raise their hands in the room, the order that they come in, so that's a little bit easier. I've got somebody typing /clap on Facebook, which is awesome. So that's kind of fun. But with that said, I'm going to now take the slide out of Facebook, and I'm going to ask all my presenters to please join me in standing up here in the front of the stage area. And I'll try to make sure that you guys can all be seen on the live stream. Whoa, I accidentally hit a full screen. There we go. So it looks like everyone is here. All right, and this is the point where I generally I would actually throw this one and say who's going to be the brave person to ask the first question. But I'm going to throw it out myself, because I was reflecting earlier today on a conversation I should say, that I had with an educator. Basically about 2 years ago, saying, how I think VR could completely transform the way education is done if we got away from the concept of, thinking of education the way that it works now in terms of the classroom model and kids being grouped by age and all of those other things, and said, okay, well, what if education, at least a lot of it, was done in a VR environment? Whoever's typing, I'm going to mute the room again, apparently. So there we go. And so, the way that it would work would be, something along the lines of a Khan Academy for most of it, but then there would definitely be some physical in-person and presence. And I remember being told, like, oh, there's no way you could never possibly take the entire education system into the virtual. It's not possible. And I ran into the same person about 2 weeks ago, realizing now that at least, at the end of last year, the entire education system was just moved virtual. But the one thing that I think both Alex and Bree touched on, and I think several of you touched on a little bit, is it almost seems like we picked up the classroom and put it in a webinar or a web, chat system. And I'm wondering if there's, I'm going to throw it kind of to everybody one by one really quickly to start this off. What is, like, if you could completely re-engineer education so that it wasn't necessarily doing what we did, where we're just picking up classrooms and stick them online, how would you do it? Like, what do you think would be the major change? I'm going to go left to right here and start with Dekker, or my left to right, I should say.
Well, can you rephrase the question briefly?
Yeah, sure. So, like, right now, I'm drawing the example of my own children who are in grammar school. They're in the same classes with the same teachers and the same students, and pretty much school is school. It's just now it's done online and it's done through Zoom. If you could re-engineer things so that you didn't necessarily, so that kids could, I guess, advance through classes at their own pace versus, with the kids that they're age grouped with, or things like that. Like, what would you do? What's the one kind of major change you would make to sort of re-engineer education so that technology really could make it better, I guess?
Yeah, I think that structurally it's very, very difficult right now, unless we start having greater levels of collaboration between the teachers, right? There has to be more flexibility in terms of almost adopting a sort of university model for younger students. And I'm not sure what that age cutoff would be, but allowing people to sort of float and progress at their own pace, you would have to actually be able to have more conversations between sort of these siloed grade professors and subject matter teachers. So I think it would actually start on the faculty side.
Yeah, I think I agree with Dekker that sort of allowing more individually paced educational experiences, allowing students to be explorers and to follow their own interest and to do things at their own pace, rather than sort of having a group of kids who are starting out at different places and maybe are moving at different speeds, sort of learning the same things, which might be too far advanced or too fast for some and too slow or not challenging enough for others. So I think that there are some opportunities to take advantage of the affordances of XR for more individually constructed and paced learning.
So I have been teaching online since 2006 at the higher education level, and what I have seen happen this year, in some ways that are good, in some ways that are less good, is really see that model of online education sort of blow up. Because before it was always everything should be asynchronous. Backwards design was really important because you could have students move at their own pace. You could have, very different kinds. You could be really creative with the ways that students engaged with the material and do a lot more that was active learning. And those things I think are important in education in general, and online really helped you sort of think through that. And when we started this at DePaul, our VP of Finance said we had taken about 8 years to put 10 to 15% of our curriculum online and 2 weeks to put the other 90% online, right? We started with this idea of wanting, make sure everything's asynchronous, make sure that students can do things even if their Wi-Fi is being wonky or if they get sick, et cetera, And what we have gotten back in terms of feedback is students want Zoom and students want synchronous interactions, and they want the kind of that idea of the replication of the face-to-face classroom within the online environment, which is so different from what all the online learning best practices has been up until this point. And part of it is this kind of weirdness, like, oh, if I don't see my teacher, then they're not really teaching me, when we all know we're like on this crazy hamster wheel in the background of online education, making all the pieces fit together. But so what I would say in answer to the question is, we really need to do a lot more work of understanding the motivations of the new online learner. I think there was a lot of good research out there on understanding the motivations of those who were choosing online education when face-to-face options were available. And obviously, hopefully, we will have face-to-face options again in the future. But we are also going to have a lot of students coming to us in higher ed who are where Alex is now and experiencing Zoom school, experiencing that like online education comes with a video component, comes with this interactive component, and they're going to expect that when they get to higher ed, even in their online classes. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. So we got a couple questions, so I'm going to read through really quick. A lot of them came through on comments, and I'm going to call on somebody. The one thing I will say, I've had two people have direct message the camera avatar me. So if you are trying to actually get a message to me, it's Matthew.Wren. The Matthew_Wren is another avatar. It's another account of mine that's actually sitting in the front row here, but it's pretty much just being used for the camera for the live stream. So it's very hard for me to respond on that because it's on a separate computer. That said, the one comment that I'll throw out here really quickly, which oddly enough looks like it's coming from a speaker at next month's event, which is for Alex. Do you want a scholarship to Illinois Tech, Alex? I'm not.
No, I want him at DePaul.
You're gonna have people fighting over you. But that said, the next one, I'm gonna throw this. Sorry, Lindsay, I saw your question up a second ago. Are you there? Is Lindsay in the room still? Cool, Lindsay, there we go. Go ahead and ask your question.
So this is all new, so I'm still figuring it out. So I work with a lot of kids who have learning difficulties. Have you seen any effectiveness of using VR with students who have, some kind of, processing disorder or ADHD or anything like that? Have you seen any success?
I have a story, and again, this is from the sort of the informal out of school situation. But one of the groups of teens that I worked with had a couple of students who were autistic or somewhere on the spectrum, and they were both in. I did this class 2 years in a row. They were both in it both times. One of them engaged very, very little. I got her to start creating a small experience very briefly, but then she shut down again. One of the young men who didn't really engage much at all the first year, by the second year, I got him to get into co-spaces and to create an experience, and then even to stand up at the end of the course and present on what he had done to the group. And I had a survey for them, and I asked them, among other things, how they felt about their project or what they thought about it. And he answered, "I feel good about myself." And to me, that was just a huge win. It meant a lot. So and I've thought about the fact that perhaps, and I don't know, this is something I think would be interesting research to do, that engaging with avatars may be easier in some ways for some kids on the autism spectrum. I don't know if someone here has some expertise in that area and could speak to it, but something I have speculated about.
Done a little reading on, just for your point, Karen, on autism and social media. And so what the research tends to find is that people with autism really like computer mediated communication environments because there is more editability. You can take more time with messages. You can take a little more time to kind of figure it out, but they don't necessarily do much better in the way that they think they're doing better. But then people who are observing them or interacting with them still are like, there's something kind of a little weird, kind of off here. And my middle kid has Asperger's, so I'm an autism mom too. And so I see the way that she kind of interacts with Zoom. She thinks she's doing great sometimes when we're like, maybe that's not the way to go. So just a little anecdotes.
Excellent. So we're seeing I've seen questions on Facebook there's a couple of them that are relatively the same. I think this one's actually similar to one that's in the room, and Fallon Flowers, I'll get to yours just after this, but the question is effectively, how do you deal with the differences in underserved communities? So if essentially a VR and AR is going to be a good solution to this type of, to learning and especially to remote learning, how do you deal with socioeconomic disparity, access to technology? What do we think is the solution for this, as well as, just the differences between the differences between teaching a kindergartner versus teaching a college student, or, high school and 7th grade and all of those, because obviously those are different communities and they're going to have different levels of understanding of the technology, let alone understanding of the fact that, a virtual environment is different from the physical environment, because, I've seen it, or I've read that supposedly kids have, young enough kids can actually have trouble distinguishing. So I'm curious who wants to take that one on first.
It kind of goes with Edita's comment in the chat too about the disruption that needs to happen in teaching educators. But my thought was not so much what the educators need to know, but the disruption that needs to happen is funding. We, even with DePaul, which is a private university, and people are signing up for private liberal arts education, there was no way I could assume that students would have a particular level of technology. I could assume fairly well that they were signing up for online school, so I knew they would have Wi-Fi. But even then, we had to do some little tricks and tips to get all the headsets to work at the same time. So we were just in a position to be able to buy them all headsets, and then ideally I will get them back. Which, by the way, Matt, I need that headset back. But ideally, we will get them back. But you can't do this kind of work unless you're really going to fund it for the schools and get people the equipment, because you cannot expect people to purchase this on their own for their classroom.
Yeah, and if I can follow up on what Bree said, teaching XR development, we would use Unity, and there's such a wide disparity of the technology that's available to all of the students everywhere. So not only is it some people are on Mac and some people are on Windows, some people don't have the right graphics cards. I mean, this becomes very expensive very quickly to expect every single person to, have a capable system to develop on. That's one issue that exists at the university level. Everything, lower than that, that's a policy issue. That's something where, we need to better fund our public education. We need to, be able to provide better infrastructure. We need to be able to provide better internet access. We need people to guarantee that those things work where they live, so that everybody has that equal shot at education, which is guaranteed to them through the public systems.
Yeah, one of the things that I did in some of my projects was to get grants to fund some of the 360 video projects and write into them the cost of the equipment. And I was using very inexpensive equipment, but the idea was that I would leave it with the organization I was working with, and that the staff and the students who were engaged with them or sort of regularly worked with that organization would have the opportunity then to produce videos themselves later. And with some of the organizations, they tend to have computers of some sort or another, but we still ran into problems with not being able to use a Mac for something or another. I had to bring in my own equipment to use very often. And I think that that's probably the case with a lot of schools too. They may have invested in a lot of computers, but they may not be the ones they need. So it's going to take a lot of rethinking budgets and how they are spent. It's a really challenging problem.
Alex, from a student perspective, you got anything to add on this one?
I mean, I don't really know how, the budgeting for schools can be solved. A lot of schools in some areas can't afford new technology, and a lot of school districts they don't really want to spend the money on new technology because, you know, people don't want their taxes going to that sometimes. But I feel like that, you know, no access to technology really inhibits the creative process as well as the divergent thinking skills of a student. And one thing that a lot of students have, and I don't really want to generalize, but a lot of people my age and even younger have they have mobile phones, and depending on the make and model and the generation of the phone, they can be able to run AR apps and programs. So I've always kind of prioritized AR because of that, because it seems more accessible than having to spend, you know, $300 or more on an Oculus headset. So I think if we really want more immersive technology to be accessible in schools, it kind of has to come maybe through mobile phones, through the students' mobile phones first, and instead of the school having to spend a bunch of money on new headsets or some other new immersive technology device.
So Fallon, you had a question, and I know I've jumped over a little bit. Do you want to ask it live, or do you want me to read it? If you raise your hand in a couple seconds, I'll just call on you, and you can go ahead, just unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. My question was regarding if any of the presenters actually worked with healthcare presentations to students or pre-health students, for instance, in any of your in your work.
Thinking Karen, you might be the only one here who would be able to speak to that one, if anybody.
Yeah, well, and as I mentioned, this one project that I'm working on, we are working with nursing faculty and paramedicine faculty to kind of do some transfers of skills using simple AR headsets. I haven't actually used simulations, but I've seen a number of them, and have a colleague who works for Oxford Medical Systems, and she's a nurse, and she writes some of the scripts for simulations. And I've seen several other ones, but I haven't actually used them myself.
Okay. April's got Level X up there. But Level X, again, is very specific. And I was going to bring this up, too, as an answer. Was last month we focused on healthcare, and we actually had 5 presenters up on the stage here who were all dealing with healthcare simulation. However, most of that was actual like medical surgical training versus anything along like the grade school or high school level, which kind of gets back to the point of if you're going to be having, if you're going to be having a lot of online simulation-based learning. So first of all, yeah, Fallon, if you want to look, we do have, the whole video from last month is available on our Facebook page, or you can just go to VRARchicago.com and you can find the presentations there. So there's a lot of information about healthcare simulation training there. But again, that's surgeons, that's teaching doctors as opposed to teaching, grade school or high school students. And that's one of the things that I guess is a really good question in terms of just like curriculum at different levels. And much to what Alice was saying is like, okay, well, it'd be great if you develop a lot of stuff for Oculus Go, but then Oculus Go gets discontinued. Okay, well, what if you develop for Quest? Okay, well, that's great for right now. Well, what if 2 years from now, nobody can get a Quest? Again, and speaking, out of personal experience as somebody who, because of a corporate event and I know VRAR Chicago was actually reaching out to Oculus directly saying, hey, we need to pick up 2,000 Oculus Quests. How do we do that? And they're, at the time they couldn't say anything, which was basically that they were like, well, we're not selling them anymore because the 2's coming out. But they couldn't say that. But we're still at the point where of like, okay, there's a corporate event that has 2,000 people that they want to send quests to. So how do we do this? So it's, much to what Bree was saying of, you would think that when you're looking to spend that kind of money with one of these companies, they're going to be really responsive to you, and they're not. So anyway, that said, Jeremy, I'll let you get your question out there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to all the speakers. Really appreciate all your perspectives. I'm also from Illinois Tech here in Chicago. So Alex, a lot of what you were talking about, we're interested a lot at the school. But following up on your comment, Matt, the industry always has that conundrum. We think about Linux and how it moved over the last 20 years, 25 years from this kind of hobby project. And not until major corporations got involved, like the Linux Foundation and the massive cloud computing companies, do we see Linux everywhere. It's in cars, it's in surfboards on the space station. Are we in a similar position of waiting for kind of OpenXR, like the OpenXR standards and OpenXR hardware? Or in the panels, is this a tough enough nut to crack that it's only going to be Facebook or Amazon that has the money and the financial ability, or Apple might get in a couple of years, that if this were to become prevalent, a lot of the chat window talked about social disparity and having to get all the hardware. Do you feel this is something that there will be open devices, an equivalent of like a Raspberry Pi style VR headset, or kind of the phone style? Or do you think this is something only major companies can do and we're beholden to those platforms? What's the panel's take on that?
Well, I'll jump in if nobody else will. I think there are some companies and some people who are trying to make XR more accessible. One of the things I'm excited about recently is the new Zap box, which Zapar just had a Kickstarter campaign for. They just reached their goal, but it's a $40, they say, 6DOF headset. And I really can't wait to try it and to learn more. It won't be actually out until April. But I do think there are a number of people out there who are working to make XR more accessible in various ways. And some of the WebXR initiatives, among others, to make resources more open are among them. So I think those will be out there. On the other hand, companies like Facebook have the money to really drive some of the highly technical, cutting edge innovation.
Come on, Dekker, I know you got an opinion on this one.
Well, I guess the dividing line for me on this is it a question of what's popular, or is it a question of what will sort of be attractive enough for funding for content and making the platform robust and usable? And let's look back in time to like 2016, 2017. There was an incredibly big surge of people who were very excited about virtual reality. I don't just mean corporations and investors and whoever, but like the populace was. And part of the driver of that was cell phone based VR, kind of going from Google Cardboard up into like the Samsung Gear. And it's like, okay, I can use this computing device that I already own. We can plug it into a fairly low cost piece of equipment, and I can experience some form of virtual reality. And at the same time, though, there was this big push of, oh no, everybody needs 6DOF, everybody needs, these advanced controllers. We want to have full body tracking. We want to have this, we want to have that. So it seemed like the venture capital and funding arms of large corporations sort of were looking 5 years in the future at the expense of the popular wave that was happening. So there created this sort of vacuum of content and uses, where all of those other devices kind of got left in the dust. The money went to these larger projects that people were not ready to develop for or weren't ready for public consumption. And now we end up here in 2020 where we're still in a little bit of limbo in terms of what hardware ecosystem is going to be matched up with a good suite of functional tools. We on the other end of it, the developers, we have Unreal, we have Unity, we have various game engines, and we can kind of export projects to whatever format is currently available, but the marketplace hasn't widely adopted any individual format from a hardware standpoint, because they just don't know what's going to be too expensive or what's going to be easy enough to access. So that's not really so much of an answer as just kind of an explanation of where I feel we are now with the like the popular consumer.
Yeah, I hear people saying things like, "Oh, the Google Cardboard is not real VR," but it did allow a lot of people to experience some form of immersive media for a very low cost, and I think that's important. And so I get annoyed when I hear people saying, "Oh, good riddance to the Oculus Go." The Oculus Go was a great device that a lot of people were really thrilled to get to try and had some excellent experiences on, and it had a lot of content. So I really do applaud efforts to get more low cost devices out there, even at the expense of some of the higher resolution and better tracking, more finely tuned tracking. I think it's important just to access it in some form, at least to get started.
So really quick, I got a question from Facebook that I'm just going to throw because I don't know the answer to this one. So I'm going to see if anyone else does. But does anyone know, for those of you who actually go out and get grants, if there are any where to look for like grants for technology for, say underserved CPS students?
For what kind of students did you say?
Students, so like Chicago Public Schools is CPS.
Oh, okay.
So Chicago Public Schools would be, students who are underserved who don't have access to tech, if there's any concept of like where to get grants for students in those areas.
Yeah.
One site that you might try, it has all kinds of things you really got to dig through, is the just grants.gov. And that is a database where you can search pretty much every federal grant program that exists out there. And there are quite a few that are specifically for K through 12 education. Like I just pulled it up. I'm looking at one funding opportunity for STEM education programs. This would fit different simulation kinds of things, interactive digital media STEM resources for pre-college students, which is a weird way to say K through 12. But that's one potential resource.
Another question from Facebook, just because I don't see any hands up in the room, and I'm sorry, like the chat's going a mile a minute. So if you guys are asking questions in chat, please raise your hand because I can't follow it right now. But from Facebook, we've got, is anyone, can anyone speak to physical education now that we're doing all this online remote learning? How's physical education working? And from my own kids who are grammar school students, I'll tell you that they do actually have gym class. They are given activities to do. One of them, on I think it's 3 or 4 days a week, has a video that they watch assigned by their gym teacher, which is, sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's calisthenics, sometimes it's, do planking and core exercises. So there definitely is remote physical education taking place, even via Zoom or I guess remote current learning. But I'll leave it to the panel to answer what you see in terms of like VR and AR being used for that. Like, we're going to assign a kid to play 25 minutes of Beat Saber at the highest levels, or, what are your thoughts there?
My friend Grace, Dr. An at the VR lab down at University of Georgia, has done some work on how VR changes your experience of exercise. And so what Grace has found is that as you, in the VR environment, people are willing to work a lot harder. So if it feels like there's a goal, like if you're on a stationary bike, but there feels like a goal or a game, like people will work significantly harder at the bike and burn more calories than they will if they are just on a stationary machine. It's Grace On at University of Georgia I feel like I should know her. I think it's the Verge or the Verve Lab. I'll put it in the chat in a second.
Okay. And the one thing I'll say, this came out of actually Facebook's the Facebook Connect, where they announced the Quest 2 coming out. So whatever, a month ago or 2 months ago. The Quest 2 has, like, they've spoken about, I don't know if it's already part of it because I haven't had a chance to look, but they spoke about the fact that certain games like Beat Saber or some of the other games where you are moving quite a bit, they're tracking how much time you spend in the game. They're tracking, approximate calorie counters or things like that at this point, because they know that people are actually using this for exercise and for, for physical activity. And I'll be the first to say that, if you've spent a significant amount of time playing Beat Saber at a higher level, you're sweating. You're moving a lot. It is a workout. Anyone else want to tackle VR and AR physical education?
Please go on.
Oh, okay. So I actually have a physical education class that is virtual, kind of. So at the beginning of the year, my school sent us a bunch of heart rate monitors, and we were tasked to get some certain amount of points per week that the heart rate monitors would record. And these were kind of like indiscriminate of heart rate level and calories burned per workout. And so what it really did, what these heart rate monitors did, was it kind of gamified our physical education experience. So I found the gamification of PE to be really kind of like a motivating factor. Like they have certain on the app that's paired with the heart rate monitor, they have like certain social aspects. It's kind of a bit like a social network or something. And they have like prizes and awards that you can get if you reach a certain number of points in your workout or something like that. And so I believe if there were to be an application of AR and VR in physical education, it would have to be gamified. Whether that's to people in like physical therapy or whatever, or if that's to actual K through 12 kids. But I feel like it would have to be gamified as well as hands-free for it to work. Currently, I don't really know of a lot of AR, headsets or glasses that are very hands-free and usable, that allow you to like actually like maybe act as a heads-up display or show you where you're going if you're like working outside or going on a trail or something. And I don't really know about the applications really much in virtual reality. I have tried Beat Saber. It is pretty fun. And it is also gamified too, because it's a game. But yeah, I feel like if we were to have PE applied in this technology, it would have to be gamified and more or less hands-free to allow the user to use it correctly.
And I know we're running out of time. We've taken a lot on this question, but I just wanted to add that we're really bad at repurposing technology. And about 12 years ago, it was very, very popular for people to have a Wii Fit. It was 2 Nintendo consoles ago. So it's a very simple technology. It's a pressure sensor and a couple of gyroscopes inside of it. You can probably pick those up nowadays for $30. Pair that with a pair of AR goggles or something. You have a very functional system that actually can calibrate to showing you the proper forms and balance and things that would happen for an in-person physical education kind of environment. So I think we also have to look at what is currently available, not just what's available on the commercial headsets. What can we repurpose?
All right. I did see another hand go up in the room, and I'm going to let that person take another shot at asking what we got. We got time for about one more question, otherwise we're going to go back to networking. Bruce.
Yeah, I had to get my microphone on. Thank you. I just have a quick question regarding Bree's presentation, where she's talking about working with sustainability, and I'm wondering how she's integrated that in with her pedagogy, the way she's using AR technology. How is she introducing those sustainability concepts? What does that look like?
Sure. So a little bit different this year, but I think we've done more with sustainability in the past in the AR version of the class. So, Paul is a bit of a unique university in that it has a mission, like most universities do, but we seem to actually believe ours, which was a little weird when I got here a few years ago. And so it's diversity, human dignity, social responsibility, and urban sustainability. And so one thing that we have done in past classes is that we go around the city using, augmented reality apps, as I said, and we talk about the ways that AR can help with sustainability. So some things that you might not think of as directly as AR or more AR light, like having the transit app, right, is a kind of augmented reality. And, so we start talking about the kinds of AR that you could use to help with greater urban sustainability. And in the past, in the AR class, students at the end of the class pitch an app. So I don't ask them to create a new app in 7 weeks as first year college students, but they pitch the idea for an app and they have to tie it to one of those mission tenets. And sustainability is probably the most popular choice. One of my favorite examples is the students pitched the idea of you could have an app and you could report into the app. It could be a community kind of thing. You report into the app different sorts of sustainable choices all around the city of Chicago. So like here is a recycling center, here is a divvy bike rack, et cetera. And the more you report your these sustainable things, you would have this little AR tree, and then your AR tree would grow and become bigger, the better. So it's kind of gamified as well. So that's some of the ways that we've looked at sustainability through AR, is kind of sparking their imagination of what might be possible.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here in a second, I see you have another question, Jeremy, but I'm going to let that one go into open networking if you're okay with it, because we're pretty much out of time. But that said, nobody has to leave. That's the other nice thing about a virtual space is we don't actually get kicked out, so it's great. But what I am going to do, so everyone's aware, first of all, real quick, thank you to this panel. It's always great to have just basically a group of experts such as volunteers their time to come in and talk about this stuff and answer questions. So thank you all. Hopefully you guys can stick around and do some networking. But what we're going to do in the space really quickly is in a few moments, I'm going to unmute the room and I'm going to switch the table up. And what we're going to do is we're going to have tables that are actually circular tables that have multiple seats at them. And they're all going to be what are called private volumes. So effectively, once you step inside the circle, you can have a smaller group discussion. And that way, we can have the 30 whatever of us who are, 27 of us who are currently in the room, who can actually all talk to each other, but we can talk in groups of 4 and 5 without having to worry about the space being too loud. Thank you, David, and the several people on Facebook right now who are commenting that this is great. Beyond that, next month we have an interesting topic, and I know I saw at least one of the speakers from next month is in the room right now. I don't know if she's still here or not. But next month we're talking about esports in games, which is always a very popular topic. We have a really interesting panel. Actually, one of the things that we love having on our panel is a little bit of diversity. And I gotta say, next month's panel is looking like it's not going to be very diverse. It's looking like it's going to be all women. I don't see, at this point, we have no men on the panel. But we will be talking to some people who are representing the gaming community, both from the developer standpoint, the esports organizer standpoint, some journalists, as well as tournament organizers, and definitely the gamer themselves. I'd love to say, well, as I say, we got a really cool speaker that honestly, whenever anyone here thinks augmented reality, there's a very good chance that the company that everyone thinks of first is possibly going to be presenting next month. But that said, what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to open networking. So the conversation can continue, and it can continue in smaller groups. Thank you again, everybody, to the audience for showing up, to the speakers for presenting. Please, I say this all the time, and I see so much of it afterwards, and I've actually just got the question just came through on Facebook. Can you send contact links to reach out to the panelists? The contacts are available on the website. If you go to VRARchicago.com, all of the panelists have a profile. Their particular profile is tied directly to the event. So if you go to the event page, every event that we've hosted for at least the past, I want to say 2 years is listed. The panelists have a profile and they have their contact information that they've shared with us is linked there. So their LinkedIn profile or their Twitter or their Facebook so that you can reach out to them. I know personally, I love it if people are, if you have questions and you want to connect, please do. That's at least half the reason for this whole event series is so that people can connect with each other. So, I know for a fact we've had a company form out of our audience in the past. We've had people who've been hired out of the audience. We've had people who found jobs and found employees in here. And that happens enough that actually Level X had 3 people in the room last month just because they wanted to have people here that they were recruiting. Thank you, Nick. So that said, at this point, I'm gonna unmute the room, so it might get a little bit loud for a second, and then I'm going to change the table, so you're all going to be forced into standing. So we'll see who's actually here and who just left this sitting around, and then we're going to set up the new tables and turn on the private volumes. Once again, thank you very much. And at that point, I am going to turn off the live stream. So thank you, everybody in Facebook world. I know you guys are about 25 seconds delayed, so I'll give you a chance to catch up on that. But the room is now unmuted. That doesn't mean that you're automatically unmuted. You still have to unmute your own microphones. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make all these tables go away. And everyone's standing. And then we're going to put the conference tables in place. And the next thing I will do is I will put private volumes around the conference table. So again, look around on the ground in the virtual space. If you're inside one of those blue circles, you will only be able to hear the things that's inside the blue circle. If you're outside of the blue circle, you won't be able to hear anyone who's inside of one. So at that point, here come the private volumes.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the backflip. That was great.
Someone do a backflip? I missed that. But again, thank you everyone. Thank you very much, everybody. That's the end of the formal presentation at this point. We look forward to talking with you more. Thanks. Oh, and hey, actually, there is one other thing I want to throw out there, which I probably should. Let me undo the private volumes really quickly.
I know, Sidearm, you and I have met a couple of times.
Sorry, guys. Hang on, Laura. One other thing I want to post because there was a ton of conversation this time around in the chat, and I just want to point out it is very easy to copy and paste the chat. Literally, just right-click on the top where it says "public" on your chat. And that allows you to copy the entire transcript in case there's a lot of stuff you want to track down in there. And with that, I will turn spatial volumes back on and we can get back to private conversations. Thanks again, everybody.
That must be you, Ron, right? Hi, Lila.
Hey, Bruce. I apologize. I thought that the networking was going to...
Oh, this is fine.
Oh, great. I'm glad. Well, I wanted to introduce you to Matt, who's
yes.
right there, I think.
Just thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you. Give me 1 sec. I gotta turn off the live stream. So thanks everyone on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah.
We're gonna transition out.
Cool.
2 seconds there.
Hey, Bruce. Hi, Lila.